All right, so I've used some compressed air and gotten 90%, maybe more, of the crud that was around the carb box. Done some cleaning around the cylinder. Basically what we're going to do now is we need to loosen the carb and air intake assembly, the whole thing, together with the cylinder off the top end here, and then remove this carb box so we can remove the tank assembly from the chassis. And so to do all of that, I've got the throttle cable that's hooked up to the trigger that I have to release. I have to take the choke cable off. We'll have to loosen the vent coming from the tank, the impulse line and the fuel line off of the carb, and then once I have that done, loosen the bolts on the air filter assembly here. Then I'll be able to undo the bolts on the cylinder, and I should theoretically then be able to pull that whole assembly out. So we'll see how that goes. For my first time, there's probably something I'm not aware of here. We're going to learn together. So the quickest way it looks like I could take this trigger cable off. Hopefully there's enough leeway in it. I can bring this straight edge, yeah, right up against that cable. I can see how that's how we'll do it. It's actually pretty easy. All right. Looks like we have that more or less loose now. Hopefully. May actually have to move that cable out away from the carburetor a little bit. All right, we got it figured out. So that cable fits in that little plastic piece. Actually, that plastic piece needs to come out. And there's a little tab there that needs to be depressed so that that can pop out of the throttle assembly on the carburetor, and then be able to lift that out when the time comes. So that might well be easier said than done here. Just like that. Hope you saw that on video. And that piece fit on the carburetor. All right. Now we will try and, so with the choke, pull it back, and then you should be able to twist it, and it'll literally pop out, and then you can continue to remove it from the grommet. I'm going to keep the choke somewhat engaged there if I can, just in case anything gets in here. I'm not getting dirt inside the carburetor. Okay, now we have to deal with the fuel lines. I've got a couple hemostats here that I'm going to use if I need to, but there shouldn't be any fuel in the system, but there could be a little in the carburetor there under pressure here. So, and sometimes these can be a little bit tricky. They can be seized on there pretty well, and you do have to be careful so you don't damage them if you plan on reusing them. Once you get them started though, they will pop off pretty well. All right, no fuel there, so we're good. I might end up taking a screw and plugging these so that we don't get any junk in them. Now I have the actual fuel line. I got to do that too. There, we got it started, and we do have some fuel on it. So this is where the hemostat comes in handy so that you can close off the fuel line. The other thing that you can do is crank open the tank a little bit, and that will probably keep any fuel from coming out as we do this. If I need to, I'll pinch off the line and then grab it with the hemostat. There we go. And success. Now we will undo or we will take the vent out of its holder here. Okay, and now it's time to take a 4mm. Actually, it's going to be bigger than that, probably. Well, maybe not. So what we're doing here is just undoing these air filter holder bolts. These bolts go through the holder and a couple spacers at the bottom. Now the big car bolts that are running through back through here, we're just going to leave them in place because, like I said, we're going to try and lift this whole carburetor air filter intake assembly with the, see how that, everything should just come right off now. But before I do that, there's still part of the carb assembly I have to get off of the throttle cable. All right, just be aware that that throttle cable is a bit of a cantankerous thing. There's a little plastic piece that it is still anchored in after you take that first tab off, and you just have to work that free. Now, this whole assembly is loose. Once I get the cylinder bolts off, should be able to lift everything out. So now, if I remember correctly, I've got to get a hold of 3/16 Allen wrench. It's not a standard, like a 5mm or something like that. I do not believe. Yeah, it's a little bit different. So let's go find the correct tool for the job. All right. 3/16 on those cylinder bolts. And they're going to be in there really good, especially if somebody put, these are in there very tight. They probably have Loctite in them. We may have to try and take a impact wrench here, which is risky because it could end up breaking the bolts. But it looks like that's about what we're going to be forced to try here. All right, let's see how this works. I would not have gotten that by hand. All right. Let's get you situated here again so you can. Doesn't really look like there was Loctite there, but they're pretty manky. May have even been a little rusted. Now these daylight out in the chassis a little bit, so could it just be that they were tightened maybe a little past spec. But we got them. Really dirty. And all right, I can. Here we go. Can take a little bit to get these out. Of course, it might help to make sure we don't have any, minimize the resistance involved. There we go. She's off. Turn you off here and then we'll get a close-up. So I'm not sure if you can see all of that or not, but there is not sure I like what I'm seeing there. I'm not seeing scoring, and I can't quite tell to what degree. If that's plating wearing off, it might be. And same thing there by the transfers. But up in here, there's not sure if you can see that real well, but there's really no scoring. But all in all, I'm not pleased with the look on the inside of that cylinder, so I'm actually going to replace the cylinder assembly on this. If I get you off here and take a close look at the cylinder here, it's not terrible. The rings haven't seized anywhere, but you can see that there's definitely some dark, if I would call that glazing, but varnishing. That was the exhaust. There's the intake side. That is not scoring there, but there is some streaking. I definitely can't feel anything. I feel roughness here, just, you know, grit. So there's definitely been some stuff bypassing. And you might be able to see in the crankcase here, it's just oil. There's been no contact. The crank seems to be good. We'll have to get her off here to make sure. The bearings look pretty clean, at least from this side. We'll see when we get the seals off, but we're going to go ahead and basically just take this whole saw apart. So I guess till next time.